And welcome into In Depth with Fox Carolina Sports. Hey there, I'm Aaron Cheslock. As we do each week, we catch up with local coaches and athletes, walk their path to their particular point in their career. And we've got quite the resume for you this week. And the head coach of the Greenville Swamp Rabbits, Andrew Lord. Coach, thanks so much for joining us. I know the season gets going a little bit later this week. In fact, when this comes out, it'll be just 1 day or 2 days away as you get started on the road on the 23rd. But first of all, how excited are you? Is it anxiety when you're at this point of the preseason? You know, you essentially have an idea of what your team looks like. A bunch of guys coming back as well. So overall impressions and your feeling as the season, the puck's about to drop on the 21-22 season.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Really pumped up, excited. It's a great time of year. This is what we want to do as coaches and players. We want to get back out there. Obviously, the off season goes along a little bit, long, and just excited. All the teams are back in the league this year, so pandemic-wise, it's in a lot better shape. And like the team, we have 10 or 11 returning guys. I think that bodes well for us. It allows us to just start the process a lot further along than last year, where we were all new. We were all kind of learning from day one. I feel like we're, months ahead at this point. Our culture's great. Guys are working hard. Good young team, fast team. I think we're in good shape.
When you look at where you were at this point last year, you mentioned the pandemic. You mentioned, you're coming back to the States and North America in general, where you're from. And, all the nuances of learning the actual roster and then learning the style of play these guys are accustomed to, trying to meshing that with your style of play and what you've been so successful at. What is the difference in Coach Andrew Lord between this time 2020 and this time 2021?
Yeah, I think a lot. I think, I like to learn and improve daily. Always critiquing myself, finding ways to get better. Had a great off season, was able to take in an NHL camp, be around some great players there, some great coaches, obviously watch a lot of film and a lot of NHL clips and, the playoffs from last year. So you get some new ideas. I think still the fundamentals are all there. I think the big thing is just, again, that group coming in. Also, recruiting wise, we knew what we needed. I think we went out and got it. And, when you have that base of 10 guys from the season before, it allows you just a little more time to find that additional 10 or 11 guys rather than trying to scramble and find 20 to 22 guys, brand new each season. So I think the process is a lot further along. Excited about it. I think we're just going to be able to be a little bit more technical in our systems, in our style of play. We can kind of get into the nitty gritty parts of it rather than just the basic package, which is what we were trying to do early last season. We were trying to develop our culture, trying to, get to know guys, trying to get them to learn, what we want and on and on. So, again, much further ahead. It's a lot more fun too, because, when as a coach, you want to get into that sort of further detail and, a little bit more gamesmanship against these other teams and whatnot. So, a little bit of a summary there, but overall very excited.
Before we get back to this year getting going, I think it is important to kind of recap a season ago, because the last time we talked to you on the 2021 season is, you were in a tough spot. You had a successful season, but the way it ended was a tough pill to swallow. And you guys were so close to making it to the Kelly Cup playoffs. But I do think when you put the entire season in perspective, and I'm sure you have an easier time doing that now with some time to reflect, it's pretty incredible what you guys accomplished. Again, this is Coach Lord's second season that he's going into. His first one comes off a great resume over in Europe, which we'll get to in a minute. But they finished second in the Eastern Division, make it to the Kelly Cup playoffs for the first time since 2017. You want to talk about an increase in wins. And again, as we just mentioned, the early part of the season, they're just trying to find their footing at this point. 38-19 overall, 29-30 is the record that he inherited from the 1920 season. You fell to the Stingrays in the postseason, the rival here in the Palmetto State. So I know that was tough to take, but when you look back on the entire season, I got to imagine, again, not the way you wanted it to end, but you have to be proud of the way this team came together and fought. and really gives you quite the building block as you get set to get into this year. You have a immediate example of here's where we are, here's where we need to go in order to hoist that trophy at the end.
Yeah, I mean, I think you summed up a lot there. As a competitor, as a competitive team, we're never going to be satisfied unless we win the whole thing. That's just the reality of the sport. That's the reality of sports in general. But really proud of it. I think we put our team back on the map. I think, there was some difficult years there before our ownership group took over and our new president came in. And then fortunately, I was feel very fortunate to be a part of it. And, we were able to bring in some new staff, people upstairs, people down here in the hockey ops. And it was just a whole new feel. And I think we created that culture and reconnected with the city. And, the guys played great. They really laid it all out there. And obviously the results show, when you get down to the conference finals, it's one play, one bad mistake can cost you. And that was, essentially what happened. And as difficult as that is to take, I guess, tons of positives. I think for a first year with our organization, it was huge. I think, you could almost argue it was ahead of schedule almost. What I love though is, when you do that, it just creates this whole new set of expectations, right? So now it's winning the league or it's a bust. And we love that. We want that pressure. I think that's great for our players. That's great for, our coaching staff and organization. And we just got to keep building from there. But all in all, it was a memorable year. It was one that I loved. And, I was coach, half the teams didn't even play. I had a number of buddies, coaching mentors and friends that just didn't even get to do their job. So I was thankful that our ownership went above and beyond and kind of risked a lot there, and it panned out well. And I think it set us up well for this season. So, the crowds started to come back towards the end there. Also, a couple of those playoff games were rocking. And I think that's, we're going to see more of the same here as we start.
Yeah, in Greenville, it's in South Carolina, so not like traditional hockey country. But when the Swamp Rabbits are doing well, the community embraces them very quickly. And you do have a home ice advantage at the Well. So I know that, not saying that the pandemic is over by any stretch, but hopefully we're on the other side of this mountain and we'll be able to get back to watching sports the way we're all accustomed to enjoying and loving them and all that good stuff. This year's team. We only know so much, when we look at last year's roster, the big names, Jardine, Thompson, those guys on the attack, and Jardine, defenseman, Bradley and Thompson, what I meant to say there. But, so much talent and really had some superstars, and you had a bunch of guys step up when you needed it most. Finkelstein is a guy that, really came on at the end of last year. Who's back? Who are the new additions we need to know before you guys drop the puck here at the Well in a couple weeks?
Yeah, again, 10 or 11 returnees, depending who stays up in the American League. But Zimmer, right off the bat, he was a first-year player last year. Rinaldi was a first-year player. They're both back, more experienced. I think they're due for real breakout seasons. Matt Bradley's back. He'll be a leader for us. He'll be a go-to guy on the offense. And then from there, on the back end, Rauhauser, really good, solid player that can contribute offensively. We have Frank Hora, who, will be right up there in our leadership group. And, who's been between this league and the American League now for 4 seasons. He's a veteran at our level, and, he brings a lot, can do it all. Great guy as well. Goaltending, we have Lethamon back from Ontario Reign there. Great, backstop. He really showed what he could do down the stretch the last couple months last season. And then, some of our depth pieces are back as well. The Bryce Reddick type players, these kind of guys that'll do anything for the team, play the right way. That really rounds out our core group. New guys, Bobby Russell in the back end, really fast, great skating, young defenseman. Dallas Gerard's up front, hard hitting, physical type, power forward. So I think we got a nice mix. We got a good blend. We got some good, really young, hungry players that are, I could probably argue it's the most coachable group that I've ever had in my 8 years of coaching. I know we're only 10 days in a training camp, but I think that says a lot, and it's fun to be a part of. So lots of positives. We're just going to have to get after it here now, and when the real thing starts.
I've been covering this team for the better part of a decade, almost a decade, but last year's games against the Stingrays seem to be taken up a notch. And certainly when you're in the postseason, that speaks for itself. But I'm curious, you open the season against them. How cautious do you have to be with this team, for the guys that are back in particular, to not put too much stock into a game that simply counts as 1 win, 1 loss? Or do you go out there and say, hey, let's set the tone right from the get-go here and let them know that we're not going to have a repeat of last year? How do you go into it? What are you saying to these guys before they head out on the ice?
I mean, I hope there's be a lot of, ill will or whatever you want to call it from last year's defeat. Again, knowing the group we had, they're a bunch of competitors. It hurt last year losing how we did there. And, I'm sure that's going to fill us with some energy, some motivation. At the same time, you're right. It's game 1 of 72 games. We're going to play them 10, 15, 16 times this season. So there'll be a lot of games against them. For me as a coach, very little talk about, wins or retribution or any of these type of things. Very process driven. We're focused on how we need to play in each zone, our systems, our tactics, how we need to, conduct ourselves on the bench as a team, our overall culture. Those are the things that we'll be focusing on. And, it doesn't matter who we're playing. We're always going to focus on that type of stuff. So.
Well, the show is called In Depth with Fox Carolina Sports, and I want to get to your resume here because some folks may not have really caught all the wins and championships that you won before you got to Greenville. So let's get going right there. Again, you just came off your first season with the Swamp Rabbits, and what a season it was. You come from the Cardiff Devils of the Elite Ice Hockey League, who you had a lot of success playing in that league as well. But 3 conference championships, 2 Challenge Cup championships, 2 league titles, 2 playoff championships as well. You're the winningest coach in Devils history, 221, 75, and 22 across 6 seasons as their head coach. When you think back to season 1 in Cardiff versus where you were when you decided to make the trek back to North America, and you did that at the beginning of the pandemic, I'll remind people. So I'm sure there are some interesting stories that come along with that as well. But if you were to encapsulate that entire experience, where you grew as a hockey coach, where you grew as a person with all that winning.
Yeah, appreciate the compliments. I was very fortunate in Cardiff as well. Great ownership, great organization, great fan base. There's a ton of parallels. It's almost eerie. So many similarities from, new ownership buying a team, to a whole new staff, to a great city, a little bit of an unknown gem as far as, the off-ice component there. 400,000 people with a great, city core, downtown city core. Here, little smaller size, but the weather, the downtown core is amazing. The surrounding areas, there's just a ton of positives. The way the organization treats the players, from accommodation to some of the little other things that, go a long way, that just show the professionalism of the club. So there's a ton of parallels. The support I have, being allowed to kind of coach and do my job and to manage the team the way I see fit, and having that support and that, that trust, I guess. It really goes a long way, because I'm fully recognize not every coach has that. We all chat, I guess, and we all know the different situations. As far as our team, that core group, the second season in Cardiff, we had 12 guys coming back from the first year. So this is very similar with 10 or 11, possibly 12. Again, so many similarities. Over there's a couple different trophies. So we were able to win one that was like a tournament type thing in the first season. Last year, we obviously didn't win a trophy, but, finishing 1 point out of first place to the Florida Everblades and then losing in the conference finals, I think is right up there. So I'd say, very on par, if not even better here, I would say. And then as far as myself, just learn a ton, different challenges, of course. Here, there's a salary cap. There's dealing with affiliations, dealing with all the player movement. There was your own set of challenges, but I definitely took a lot of what I learned, in that first season there, and then also the subsequent 7 seasons to this process here and this sort of rebuild, if you want to call it. So feel very confident, feel good about it. But at the end of the day, it is it's a results-based sport. So we got to go in Saturday and win a game and then go from there.
When you look at your career as a player, there's a ton of success there as well. 10 seasons as a pro, 3 in the ECHL with Wheeling. But you also had a lot of success over there in the EIHL, 173 points in 216 games. It's pretty good there. When you think about where hockey is popular in North America versus in Europe, and you think about how you've had success in so many different parts of both continents, where do you see the biggest differences in the games? And really, I guess we'll take that question in a second. What kind of player was Andrew Lord? And is there anybody on this roster that you say, I see a little bit of myself in that guy?
Hardworking, honest player, played the right way, played to the details, the systems, kind of an all around, could contribute offensively a little bit. If you put me with some really high end skill guys, I could kind of supplement that, I guess. But good on face-offs, blocking shots, penalty kill, just sort of the nitty gritty aspects of the game, which I think, for me to make, I came out of college, I had a terrible college career. I was undrafted, went to Wheeling, basically just made the team out of camp and then chipped away at it, the pro process there. And I think because of that, I had to learn the game, learn, how I could add value. And I think that helped a lot in my coaching role now. But yeah, it was fun as a player. A lot of wear and tear on the body, a lot of fights and all that kind of thing. As far as, the game has changed a lot. There's a lot less fighting, concussions have sort of done a lot of that portion of the game in, as well as other sports, obviously with the physical element. But we got some guys, Dallas Gerards, Justin Knockbauer, currently injured for a little bit, but he's the type of guy that could do that. And then other guys, they might not fight a bunch, but they're going to play physical, hard, Frank Hora, Bradley, these type of guys, they're going to give it everything they got. They're going to lay it on the line for the team. So I see a lot of similarities in the passion and kind of team style of play.
And, you did make it up to the American Hockey League for a few seasons there and, with Rochester, Milwaukee, Oklahoma City. So your resume speaks for itself. My question is, when you look at trying to coach that kind of fundamentals and maybe not the goals and assists and the saves and all things that show up on the stat sheet, but to have guys play that gritty type of style in order to make the other things happen, because it is a true team game. Everyone needs to be in unison on the ice, arguably more than any other sport. So does it make it easier to push that message when guys are hearing it from a guy that proved himself for a decade?
Potentially. I mean, I guess maybe if they did the research on me, they would see how I played, but I'm not sure. I mean, guys nowadays, I don't know if they're looking up what their coach did as a player. So I think you get found out real quick. I think your video, I think the way you communicate, I think your one-on-one meetings, I think, what you're preaching and what you're trying to, or how you're trying to improve each player, I think is going to really show them whether you know what you're doing or not. And I try to relate to all players, right? I mean, I can't just have a bunch of gritty guys that only play one style. We're very well rounded. We have some high-end skill set guys, Liam Pecораros, Kemp, all these type of guys. They can really, play a much different style than I played. So relating to them, I think, is also important. But yeah, I mean, I think I want them to think of me as a coach and my knowledge as a coach rather than maybe what I did as a player.
The question I jumped the gun on a couple of questions ago is, you played in most of the Eastern Seaboard here in the U.S. You played in Canada, obviously, where you're from, and then that long tenure overseas. What are the differences in the game between European hockey and what you see here in North America? Because I think really from the NHL down, it seems to be kind of meshing the way they play in Canada and what they're being taught here in America. And but I am curious about the differences because hockey is more and more becoming as international of a sport as any out there.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point. I think just like the business world, the last 20 years, very globalized now. You know, the borders are kind of no more. Everybody knows everybody. The scouting staffs, the skill coaches, everyone's learning from different countries. You know, when I first started out as a kid, it was much more, you know, every country had a real defined role of how they played. Now it's much more of a blend. I do think my time overseas helped a lot. The UK League was probably a blend between, you know, pure Europe and pure North America, because there were a lot of North American players. We had anywhere from 12 to 14 imports every year, Canadian American guys. So, you know, a bit of a blend of a style. But when I was over in the UK, we would play many of the years in what was called the Champions League, where we play the Swedish teams, we play Finland, Germany, all these type of different countries. So, but to answer your question, simply the ice over there is 15 feet wider, so there's a lot more space. So a little bit more skill based, a little less physical because of that extra room, a little bit more puck possession over there. Here, you know, it's a little bit more of a grinding, in your face mentality, much less fighting and kind of rough stuff over there as opposed to here, even though it is dying down, like I just mentioned in the previous question over here. Systematically, there is definitely some differences, you know, a little faster pace here or there. Like I mentioned, there'll be more control breakouts, more control forechecks where you're really set in a set structure to try to, you know, nullify the other team. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, scoring goals and, you know, kind of the nuts and bolts of the game are very similar. You still need to get inside the dots, you still need to get to the net front, you still need to be direct. You know, any good team in any country is doing those things. So, yeah, some similarities and a few differences.
You mentioned this a little while ago, but it is a point that I think is interesting. And, you know, I had Iggy Suarez from the Greenville Drive on our show, you know, a few months ago before the Drive season got going. And it's a similar situation you guys are in, where you are it's pro sports, but you're an affiliate of a major league team. And it's a dual process where you're trying to win games and win your championship, but you have very little control on the roster fluctuation that comes and goes. How do you blend, as someone who's been on the ice with skates on yourself in this league, having each player's individual success in mind throughout the ranks of the affiliations, as well as trying to make sure that there's team camaraderie and chemistry, all the things that it takes to win hockey games night in, night out?
Yeah, it's a great question. There's a lot of moving parts to it, a lot of sort of countering parts, really. You know, when a coach calls or a general manager calls to ask about a player, you know, probably very easy for me to kind of sewer the guy and try to keep him here. But I think first and foremost, integrity, honesty, I think are very important. I think, you know, kind of what you alluded to, putting yourself in the player's shoes, wanting what's best for them. I think that is only going to help you in the long run. I think that's going to build better relationships with agents, with American League organizations and NHL organizations. I think it will also attract more players to you if every year you're, you know, promoting guys and getting guys to move up. So there's a lot of, you know, mutually beneficial parts to it. There is a definite lack of control. I would say for me in the UK, where I could pick my roster start to finish, meticulously plan all summer long, to very small details as far as, you know, who you want where in the power play and the penalty kill and the lines you want. Over here, you got to be ready to maneuver and to be flexible. You know, we're obviously doing the best planning we can, but, you know, if Florida sends us 5 guys down through Charlotte, or they send us 1 guy down, it makes a world of difference, right? So there's a lot of moving parts, and we're just trying to work through that. And I do think it's a great development league. I think for myself as a coach, I learned so much through that process, and you're constantly, you know, trying to manage and work with different style of players and different personality types and all these things. So for a young guy trying to move up and learn, I think it's a hell of an opportunity.
And I do think, you know, not to butter you up even more. But I think that's one of the more impressive things of your first year here in Greenville is you come in with a winning pedigree, but it's a completely different system over in Europe, and you're able to withstand all the challenges that come with, the ECHL, just day-to-day operations of putting a winning hockey team out there, as well as any COVID things that may fly your way. But you balanced it pretty well. I want to ask you a question about off the ice. When you live in Europe for that long, I'm sure you got homesick and there were things that you missed here. What was the thing when you came back to North America that you're like, thank God? And then vice versa, what's the thing that you've been here the last year plus that you're on, oh man, Europe does that better. I wish we could do that here. So that's a two-part question, but I am eager to hear your answers.
That's good. I've lived all over. I've lived all over North America. I was in Germany for a year. I was in the UK, obviously, for 7 or 8. Getting back here, I'd say the pressure and the intensity overall of just sports in general, and even just like business, like it's the big time here. It's full throttle. I think that all flows down from the NFL really, and just the stakes are so high. I think that pressure and that how much everything means is really fun and exciting. Not that it wasn't important in the UK there, but when you have the Florida Panthers tuning in or checking your team out, or the LA Kings or whoever it may be, I think it adds just another element for the players, for myself, for the organization. There's I'd say that's really fun hockey wise. And then off ice, the weather here. I'm a Southerner now. I was from Vancouver, tons of rain. UK, tons of rain. I got down here, and it's unbelievable. At first, I was hot. Now I went back to Vancouver to see my family for a little bit in the off season, and I found it cold. So I think I'm officially, a South Carolinian here. Hopefully, that's how you call it, what you call it. But and then difference over there. Some of the history and all that is pretty unique. Some of the different architecture, buildings, some of the accents, just it is one heck of an experience being overseas, and even just how close some of the other countries are. You can fly to Spain in an hour and a half, and go to Germany in 2 hours, or Austria, all these different spots. So you can really bounce around, and I'd say that that unique culture and it was definitely fun to experience.
South Carolinian was dead on, and as a Baltimore boy myself, I haven't shoveled snow in 9 years now, so it's pretty easy to look at that as a perk of living in the South without question. We're getting set to wrap up here, but I do have a couple of just quick random questions for you. When did you fall in love with hockey? When did you know this is what I want to do? And who was the guy that you idolized growing up?
Yeah, as a Canadian, very easy to, you're just, it's the religion back there, really, right? It's like football here in the U.S. What I grew up with, playing street hockey, getting on the ice from, the age of 2, from as early as I can remember. I loved the game, watched it all the time, played it all the time, was completely obsessed with it, and that never changed. And then guys I idolized, in my age range, I guess, growing up that I watched, I kind of miss Gretzky. Like, he was on the way out. He was still playing, but he definitely wasn't, in his glory days there. Joe Sakic comes to mind. Jerome McGinley comes to mind. I was a Vancouver Canucks fan, obviously. So Trevor Linden, Pavel Bure, these type of players. Guys that, it was pretty electric type player, Pavel Bure. The other one's a little bit more all around captain type, can do it all. Those were definitely a couple of guys I like to watch and emulate when I became a pro.
I can remember we have the BMW Pro-Am here every year, and they always get some big time names. And one year it was Gretzky, and his daughter, who I believe is married to Dustin Johnson, one of the top golfers in the world, also a South Carolina native. But when you have a guy of that magnitude, you're always approaching the interview as just a general sports fan, as God, I really hope that you're as good of a guy as you seem like on TV. And thankfully, Gretzky couldn't have been a nicer guy. And, you don't have to be when you're of that stature. When you're one of the guys that are considered the GOAT, you got to be however you want to be looked at in that nature. So it was very cool to see that. But, there have been so many great hockey players that come up through Canada. And, we're seeing the American game really turn over. I guess you have to throw like Russia and all those guys that are coming into. How big of a melting pot has this sport become? And how good is that for the game? You mentioned your experience of different strategies and different approaches to the game starting to blend together. But when you have Ovi coming over from Russia and making such a big impact, obviously there are so many superstars from Canada, and the U.S. is churning out a few as well. Is that good for the overall game, or do you like it more where, you have clashing styles from, I guess, when you were coming up through the ranks?
I mean, I do think I was, really big into hockey history and was a nerd about it growing up. So, the Summit Series and the Miracle on Ice and all these type of things, I think had an additional flavor to it because of that difference in style of play. But I think it's incredible for the way it's grown the game. I mean, this game's developed so much even the last 5 years. The speed, the skill-based play now, it's wild. And I think a lot of that has to do with the globalization of the sport. And I also think, there's not back, even 10 years ago, you can maybe find a guy in a different country that was sort of a hidden gem. Now, obviously, just like any sport, you're still making the right picks and wrong picks, but I don't think there's nearly as many, misses or guys you never heard of in the draft. So I think everyone's so heavily scouted now and known, and it really is, it isn't, a North American thing or Europe thing. It's all together. I mean, I'd like to see the statistics in the NHL now for the breakdown. I'm sure it's much more even.
Yeah, I think the melting pot effect is without question starting to take effect. Final one for me, you had your own individual path of getting to the pros, but there might be someone watching this, who's in South Carolina where it's not as big of a sport in the youth ranks, but certainly growing. What would be your advice to any aspiring hockey player that looks to follow in your footsteps, make it to the pros? Just the X's and O's of what you should be doing as a youth player working your way up to through the ranks, and any tips you might have from your experiences.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think, don't get discouraged. I think at this point now, there's been plenty of players that have made the NHL from unique environments, non-hockey or traditionally non-hockey markets, number of players. So it is possible. It's really just what you're going to bring every day to the table and that get better mindset. You can easily do stuff off the ice if you don't have enough ice time. You can play road hockey, stick handle. You can still shoot pucks off, different type of surfaces. You can do all these different type of things for your skill set. Whether you have a gym or not, you can easily do enough cardio and conditioning and all these things to strengthen yourself. It's really just a work ethic and a dedication and a get better mindset. I think now the other really interesting thing, and this really applies to coaches too, is just the way you can learn, right? Everything's at your disposal on YouTube and online. There's no excuse not to learn daily. So I think chip away at those things, and anybody can have a real good chance if they put their mind to it.
And just to piggyback on that point, if you're good enough, they'll find you with so many avenues for the internet, social media, and all that stuff. If the skills are there and they're present, you display them on the ice or even sometimes in practice. Even if a street hockey game goes viral, there are so many different ways to get noticed. And hockey scouts are always looking. I can guarantee you that. So he is Andrew Lord, the head coach of the Greenville Swamp Rabbits, getting set to have the season start on October 23rd against the South Carolina Stingrays. Obviously, there'll be a lot of interest here in the upstate, although the puck will be dropped in the low country to start. Then you open up the year the next weekend. I guess the final one for me, Coach, what's the number one thing you can guarantee we're going to see from this bunch you put out there on the ice later this week?
Yeah, tons of passion, hard work, a team game, everyone working together, laying it on the line for, their teammates, for their club and their city. And I think it's a real exciting time for our organization and the city, and can't wait to get started.
And again, they start at the Well the week after with a pair of games through the weekend. Coach, I certainly wish you the best of luck this upcoming season. Semifinals in the Kelly Cup playoffs a year ago. Let's see if we can get them to the finals this year. Best of luck, and we'll talk to you down the line.
Awesome. Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
All right. That's going to do it for this week's episode of In Depth with Fox Carolina Sports. We'll be back with you for another great episode next week. Have a good one.